If Ukraine hadn't been persuaded to give up its nuclear capability, then Putin would never have invaded them. And he said, look, if I'm not going to get NATO membership, which Putin would probably see as a red line for him, then I want to have the firepower that deters him from attacking us again if we do a settlement. And he said, and that should include a nuclear weapon, right? In other words, give us back the deterrent we had, which if...
No, Piers. It is about time someone corrected Piers Morgan on this disinformation. Since this Russian special military operation started in 2022, Piers Morgan has been one of the misinformed journalists going on and on and on, claiming that had Ukraine not given up its nuclear power for security to Russia, Russia wouldn't have been attacking them since they would have had a deterrent. Hello and welcome again to the Edge of Politics podcast. Geopolitical Queen here with today's episode on how Ukraine is pretending to have been the owner of a Soviet nuclear weapon that was stationed in Ukraine by the Soviet Army at the time when Ukraine was part of the USSR. You would think that individuals like Piers Morgan, who claim to be professional journalists and shouldn't be allergic to research, could slightly help themselves with such information before broadcasting propaganda. But no, Piers keeps on and on and on about his own opinion, hoping that this misguided opinion become facts one day. So how did this imaginary story of Ukraine willingly handing over its nuclear weapons to Russia come about? First of all, Ukraine became independent in 1991. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union stationed some of its nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Thus, at the time of Ukraine's independence, it was agreed that the nuclear weapons would be the property of Russia, which inherited the Soviet Union. On the 5th of December 1994, a security assurances agreement relating to the accession of Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine was signed between the three nuclear powers, which were Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom in Hungary. This treaty became known as the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances. In the agreement, it was agreed that Russia recognizes the sovereign states of Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine and effectively remove all social or further Soviet nuclear weapons from their soil. The parties herein, under the guarantees of the US and the UK, agreed, and Russia took over the nuclear weapons which were stationed there again by the Soviet Union. So when did Ukraine ever own any nuclear weapons and got its hands twisted to hand them over to Russia for peace, as reported severally by Piers Morgan? Or let's look at it this way. The United States also has nuclear weapons stated in Germany. Should the US decide to withdraw from Germany, wouldn't they still be the owners of their weapons until they decide to hand them over to Germany, for example? Isn't this the responsibility of talkatives like Piers Morgan to read this Budapest Memorandum and report the truth instead of pouring sand into the eyes of his listeners because he has been bamboozled to believe that the former clown Zelensky is Churchill 2.0? Now listen to his irresponsible, simple-minded argument of why Ukraine should be given nukes to fight Russia.
If we'd had it, would have stopped him invading. I thought that was a perfectly reasonable point. You know, we made Ukraine, led by America, made Ukraine give up its nuclear defense, and look what happened.
Piers, if you're telling me now that we should give guys have already shot off missiles into Russia itself, if you're telling me the West should give Zelensky...
Why shouldn't Ukraine fire missiles into Russia, given the number of missiles Russia's fired into Ukraine? Tell me.
Because those missiles were not, at least the American missiles were given under the auspices they would never be fired into Russia in those depths, because then you could trigger a broader conflict. Look, all this fear of the Russian army.
Why should Russia have the right to do it, but Ukraine not?
When I came off sea duty and was in the Pentagon, everything was about Russia. When I was a naval officer, all we did was hunt Russian submarines. I was on an anti-submarine destroyer protecting a carrier battle group. It was all about getting the Russian fast attack submarines. In the Pentagon, it was all about deep interdiction in the North German plain to make sure we could stop the Russians from rolling across Poland into Germany. That doesn't exist anymore. They can barely take Kharkiv. They haven't gotten to Kiev in 3 years of fighting with almost 1 million casualties. So this whole thing of the Russian army being so overwhelming is, to me, just doesn't seem to be a fact on the battlefield. And if it is, the UK and NATO ought to take it seriously, and they're not taking it seriously now because they don't build.
Exactly the point. If Russia is this monster that wants to take Poland and all of Europe, then why hasn't Russia taken all of Ukraine since 2022? Because that is not Russia's plan. Very simple. Russia is not interested in taking Western Ukraine. And President Putin has said that times without number. But propagandists like Piers Morgan would want us to believe in his fiction. Now listen to the best of it all.
A fight of two Slavic entities over the Russian-speaking Donbass and Crimea is, we just don't have a dog in that fight, okay? We can't be everywhere.
You do. It's called democracy. It's called safeguarding freedom and democracy wherever you see it attacked.
What are you talking about? Piers, did you not live through the first half of the 21st century protecting democracy in Iraq and Afghanistan?
No, hang on.
That's right. Steve Bannon couldn't have said it better. But when it comes to characters like Piers Morgan, you can only think of the saying, that is, you can take a horse to the riverside, but you cannot force it to drink. Piers Morgan lives in another world on the Russia-Ukraine issue, but let's hope that he gets redeemed one day. So what do you think? Is Piers Morgan being ingenious, or he's just saying whatever he is paid for to say? Well, kindly leave your comments in the comment section below, and thanks for tuning in. I will be back with the next broadcast. Good day.